Hello and welcome. My name is Kimberly Grief, creator of Evolve Yoga, where tradition meets modern movement science. Today's practice, we're working on strengthening our backside, our posterior chain. We have this forward-facing kind of momentum in our lives. Our eyes are positioned in our heads in a way that we look forward. Most of us, our daily movements are in the sagittal plane, a forward and backwards kind of motion. Sitting at desks, hiking, running, walking, all of that occurs in the sagittal plane. Today's practice of unconventional asana will take us through the frontal plane, which is side-to-side movement, activating some very important hip stabilizing muscles, particularly your gluteus medius. Your gluteus medius lives on the backside of your body. It's part of your glutes, and it's a fan-shaped muscle that is its own agonist and antagonist muscle pairing. Similarly to your deltoid on your shoulder, the glute medius helps to stabilize the joint of your hip. It also helps to stabilize the knee and the ankle. I jokingly call this work putting the ass back in your asana. Modern yoga's obsession with stretching and releasing and letting go of every little bit of tension isn't helpful in the fact that we're a tensegrity model. We need tensioning within our body to support the systems and structures above and below. What I found in my 20+ years of massage therapy and my time teaching and practicing yoga is that a weak muscle won't yield. So oftentimes we'll have a muscle that's underperforming or not firing as efficiently as it could, and sometimes it'll tighten up in order to find stability. Today's practice is one of strengthening those muscles so that we start to provide the kind of strength and stability to key places so they can soften and relax. It's kind of counterintuitive to what most of us have been taught when we feel tightness or tension. I know for many years I taught to stretch and to release that tension. But what I found is that by strengthening, that tension and the tightness that I used to feel in my hamstrings, in my hips, has dissipated. My ability to do strength-based movements have moved out into all aspects of my life. I find strength in lifting. I find support in hiking and walking and running and my everyday movements. For today's practice, you will need either a strap or a dowel. And I've got a piece of PCV pipe here that I'll be using, but you probably have a dowel in your home. Think of like the mop handle or the broom handle. Sometimes you can even take apart the closet a little bit to get the dowel that your hangers hang on. If you don't have a dowel, a strap will work pretty good. You'll also need a single block for today's practice and access to a wall. I want to talk to you about your spinal column and your core. Your spine is created through an S-curve shape. The primary curve that we all come into this world in is a C shape. We're furled into the shape of a C in utero, thank goodness, so we can fit in our mom's tum. As we develop, we learn to lift up our heads, we get a secondary curve of the cervical spine. The thoracic spine is slightly curved in that C shape that we came into the world with. That's considered a primary curve. We don't ever want that to go away. Our lower backs are a secondary curve as well, and those are developed when we learn to stand and walk. We get to the sacrum as it wedges into the two sides of your pelvis. And the sacrum is one of those primary curves. So when you think about it, you can think of sacrum, lumbar curve, thoracic spine, cervical spine, and then your head sits on top. Today's practice is really about maintaining the S-curves of your spine. And if you think of the spine almost like a sailboat's mast, a sailboat has guy lines coming down from that main mast to help stabilize that structure. You can think of core bracing the same way as those guy lines would come out and brace. So when I talk about core bracing and spacing, I'm not talking about pulling your navel towards your spine. I'm talking about this corseting effect in which the abdominal wall kind of becomes the guy line that stabilizes the mast of your spinal column. A way to feel core bracing and spacing is to think about laughing or bracing yourself as if you were going to be tickled. Nothing changes in the shape of your spine when you do that. In fact, if you think of kind of almost engaging and a broadening out through your core muscles, you might sense almost a spreading or a moving away from the midline. And yet your navel might kind of drift a little bit further or a little deeper towards the spine, but that's not the primary action that's occurring. If you think of this core bracing as a shield, your abdominal wall kind of bracing to protect your organs, you ought to be able to breathe behind the shield of your core bracing. Your belly is not going to be able to expand out very much, nor is it going to come in very much like it would if your belly was relaxed and you weren't engaged at all. One more thing about this. Our core is task dependent, meaning that when we engage it for movements to stabilize, to brace, to lift, it's really only engaging to the degree of whatever task we're doing. Sometimes we can almost out-train our reflexive nature and out-train the intelligence of our body. So today's core work really honors the reflex of your core muscles and allowing them to fire in a task-dependent way. So when we get to the side planks and the side bridges in today's practice, many of you will wonder why we're not holding them for a minute or 2 minutes. Life doesn't happen in those really strong kind of static holds. Life is dynamic and moving. And so we train the core in about 10-second intervals of engaging, bracing, being able to breathe behind that shield, and then relaxing and softening before doing the next set. I look forward to taking you through this journey. Next, you'll need your dowel or your strap. We'll use this as a way of helping us feel where the curves of our spine is. In this position, the dowel will go one hand behind you, like almost in archer arms, the hand right about at the base of your skull, where the curve of your neck starts. The other hand will find the curve where your lumbar spine is. So these secondary curves is where your hands are, and we'll use the dowel on the primary curves, the back of your head, your upper back, and right there at your tailbone. Then rise up into a tall kneeling position. You can pat up underneath your knees if you find that this is challenging for you. And we'll do some Virasana sit-backs. This is a hip hinge. So as you send your hips back and you bow forward, you're only going to the point that you don't feel the curves of your spine change shape. So that hand at your lumbar spine, your lumbar curve, is ensuring that you don't, in fact, bow your low back to do your hip hinge. This is really about the ball and socket joint of the head of your femur and your pelvis tilting forward. Switch your arms so that your other hand is at your low back and the other one will come up into this archer shape. We have 5 more of these hip hinges here. And this is really about form over any kind of really big feel. Just getting the basic hip hinge down before we move further in our practice. So once again, hinging at your hips, ensuring that the dowel doesn't lose connection with the base of your skull, your upper back, or your tailbone, and that the curve of your neck, your low back, doesn't change shape. Good. Come into Virasana, or a seated position of your choice, and hold either the dowel or a strap in your hand. Squeeze your elbows towards the midline of your body, and imagine you could break this dowel or pull the strap in two. As you do this, you might feel a broadening across your collarbones. Your upper arm bones spiral a little bit more to the outsides of the body, and perhaps you start to feel a little bit of aliveness in the back of your shoulders and your upper back. Slide your hands along the strap or the dowel a little bit further, and once again attempt to pull the dowel or the strap into. This is the same kind of warm-up we'll need for our side bridge in a moment. Maybe you walk your hands out a little bit further. Again, the elbows staying in close to the rib cage. And from here, imagine you could almost break this bar or this dowel in two. So you're applying a little bit of outward pressure, as if you could turn your palms to the wall behind you. Your wrists, your elbows, they stay in the same line. Your elbows attempting to squeeze in towards your midline as you attempt to break the dowel in two. Good. Set your dowel aside and make your way onto your left forearm. Setting up for a side bridge. Actually, grab a block. You'll need that between your knees. We'll use the block to keep the space of the legs apart to help us connect the pelvis to the rest of our body. And in this position with the block between your knees, just make sure that your feet don't end up touching and you're really maintaining the space there that the block is providing between your knees. Your heels are about in line with your butt. So that's a good way of measuring yourself out here. Your knees will be forward of your hips. And essentially, we're in that hip hinged position we were in when we had the dowel mapping our spine. The difference is most of us will come into this shape and sag down through the lower shoulder. So bring your right hand to your left ribs and lift your ribs away from the floor. Our head has a righting reflex in it. So your head will want to kind of come up into this upright position. And our work is going to be to keep our head in line with the rest of our spine. So you'll really have to feel where that is for you. And now that core bracing and spacing. So if you imagined your spine like a sailboat mast and your core abdominal muscles like the guy lines coming out to the sides, you'll start to tubularize your core in a way that ignites the sides of your waist. Bring your right hand to your shoulder and draw your shoulder in so it's not collapsing towards your ear. From here, you'll lift your pelvis up and hold steady for about 10 seconds. If you find you do this work with your neck and your head is getting fatigued and your neck muscles are getting fatigued, park your tongue on the roof of your mouth, just behind your top teeth. Slightly retract your chin and do your best to keep your head the same angle as the rest of your body. Keep your core bracing and spacing. Set your butt back, just like we did in the hip hinge with the dowel, and then relax everything for a moment. That was our first round. Second round. Lifting the side of your waist away from the floor, supporting your shoulder by drawing your shoulder down your back, aligning your head with your spine. Find your core bracing and spacing, and lift your hips up. Breathing behind the shield of your abdominal wall. Doing your best to rotate your right hip forward and your left hip back. Set your hips back, keep your core bracing and spacing until your hips come down. Then we get that little break. Preparing for the next round. Level your head with your spine, lift the side of your waist away from the floor. Find the tubularization of your abdominal wall. Here we go, lifting back up. Set your hips down, relaxing, and let's do the second side. So spinning, so your right forearm is on the ground, your block goes between your knees, and your heels are in line with your butt. Keep your feet the same space as your block is providing from your knees. Your elbow is slightly out from your shoulder. So if it's directly underneath, when you come up, we tend to almost pitch over that. So a little further away might work better for you. Lift the right side of your waist away from the floor. Align your head so it's in line with your spine as best as you can. Find the core bracing and spacing. Park your tongue right behind the front teeth and lift. You can take your hand to your shoulder and cap your shoulder, drawing your shoulder down your back. So here you're only using as much core bracing as you need to execute the pose. It's not a huge effort. Keep it though, and set your hips back, and then relax through your shoulder and your waist. Second round. Lift the side of your waist away from the floor. Draw your shoulder down your back, tongue to the roof of your mouth, core bracing, and lifting. 2 hips stacked, shoulders moving down your back. Retract your chin just slightly. Park your tongue to the roof of your mouth. Set your hips back, relax everything. Third round. So these side bridges, they progress through today's series. You can always come back and do these beginning stages if what I take you through later in the practice is too much. Third and final round here. Core bracing and spacing, side of the waist away from the floor. Lift your pelvis up, keeping your 2 hips stacked as best as you can. Set your hips back and release. Swing on over to the other side. You'll need your block here for the back side of your body, And in fact, if you stack your block on its highest height back here, and then put that up against your butt when we get into the sideline position, it's almost like you have the feedback of a wall behind you. If you're home, you have like a big wide open wall space that you can put the backside of your body on. I highly recommend that. It just helps you to feel where you are in space. I don't have that wall space here, so I'm gonna do my best with the block. Lay down on your side, left side. Bend your left elbow and let your head rest into the crook of your arm. In this position, we'll find that same little tunnel underneath the side of our waist so that we're not sagging down through the spine, essentially taking that S-curve and driving it into the floor. Instead, you'll lift the side of your waist up and keep the right side of your waist long. These are abductor leg lifts. You'll take your top leg and reach it towards the wall behind you. The two sides of your pelvis are stacked here. To help you keep that, you can find your block and place that right up against your backside. You'll need that for the second variation. And then lifting the leg up towards the sky, only to the degree that you don't shorten on the right side of your waist. Lower your leg down to about hip height, then abduct your leg towards the sky. As you go through these leg lifts, attempt to keep your heel driving towards the ceiling instead of your toes. Now, the next time you get your leg up in that abducted state, it won't be very far for most of you, and if it is, chances are you collapsed into your waist, so back on out of that. Then we have these little pulses towards the sky. And this is what's probably going to bring the fire for a lot of you. Because your glute medius is a fan-shaped muscle, if you bring your heel slightly back from the midline, you'll work different vectors of your glute medius. If you bring your leg forward of the midline, you'll work different fibers. But most of the time, if we bring our leg too far forward while we're doing this, we take over with the hip flexors. So if you do a lot of seated position or you find that your hip flexors are pretty dominant for you, think of your heel staying right in line with your hip. Of course, if your balance is off here on your side, you could always take that top hand and press it into the floor for extra support. So I said about 30 of these pulsings, right? So we really up the reps of these. And I'm going to say that's about 30 for me. Let's go into rainbow leg lifts. You'll sweep your leg forward, and as you do this, you're looking not to roll the hip back or up towards your shoulder. Bracing into the floor and keeping the side of your waist away from the floor, sweep your leg back to the starting position. 4 more of those. If you need to take a break or lessen the amount of these that you do, that is totally fine. I always joke in my classes that speed hides need, and sometimes we'll race ahead to finish a sequence because we can't tolerate being in the moment that we're in. I lost count, so I'm going to do one more for good measure. Good. So if you put the effort into that, you may have felt just a tremendous amount of work on this top side. You might also feel that same tremendous amount of work as we switch sides, because now this top side becomes the stabilizer. So spin around, lay on your right side, letting your head rest in the crook of your arm, taking your block to your backside. This bottom leg can stay bent and you're straightening your top leg out. Think of your heel in line with your hip. And then from here, you're abducting your leg up towards the sky. Make sure that the side of your waist stays long. And that's a really good indication that you're keeping this in the hip and not going to the spine to do your hip work. The top of this will do the 30 little pulsings. And remember, you are welcome to take your leg and move it back of the midline if you'd like to get a little bit different work. Just make sure your ribs don't thrust forward as you go through that. It's tempting as the heat starts to build in this outer glute to let the side of your waist sag down towards the floor. You can always push your hand down into the floor to support your body so that you don't start to deteriorate or collapse within the posture. In fact, with all of this, I would rather you do quality over quantity. Okay, here comes those rainbow leg lifts. You're sweeping your leg forward without letting your top hip roll back and knock that block over. At the same time, as you come back and around, you're trying to keep the side of your waist long. Last one. Good. Set your leg down. Good work. So now that you've got a good amount of structure and stability kind of lit up in the side of your hips and glutes, we'll move on to waking up the backside of your body a little bit more. Before we do, let's revisit the side bridge. In this next one, you can either go back to your knees bent or you can stagger your legs. So what that looks like is option A, block between your knees, ankles in line here, heels in line with your butt. Remember that same kind of support that you give your shoulder and lifting back up. Or you remove the block from between your legs. Your top leg goes forward and your front leg goes back. Now it's the inner arch of the top leg pressing into the floor, the outer edge of the back arch pressing into the floor. And we'll do that same kind of lift. So we're in a slight hip hinge here. My butt is sitting back from the midline of my body. You can either brace your shoulder here or put your hand on the floor in front of you. But once again, we have that task-dependent 10-second hold to help stimulate the reflex of your core. So here we go. Find your core bracing and spacing. Lift the side of your waist away from the mat. Lift your hips up and hold. This one is significantly harder, especially if you're used to doing side planks with your ankles stacked. This leg staggered position takes the balance aspect out of it and gives you more core connection from the side of your waist to your shoulder. So sometimes we teach the legs stacked as an up level, but to keep it in a core-centric practice and to stabilize your spine, it's keep the legs staggered. Set your butt back, let everything kind of relax. That was round one. You can always turn the back side of your hand towards the floor or even make a fist or press your palm down. Here comes the next move. Lift the side of your waist away from the mat, hoist your hips up, and hold. Park your tongue at the roof of your mouth just behind your front teeth. Retract your chin just slightly. Set your hips back. Let it all relax. It's a lot of work in the shoulders and the core. And it's all in service to helping you really sense and feel the sides of your body so that we can strengthen the back side of your body to propel you forward in life with support. Third round. Core bracing and spacing. Again, that's not pulling your navel towards the spine. It's more of that sending the guy lines of support out to the sides of your body. Lifting your hips up. Doing your best to stack your top hip on top of the bottom. Remember, our head has a righting reflex, so if your head is trying to lift up, that's going to drive your hips down towards the floor. So keep your head in line with the rest of your spine, preserving the S curves of your spine. Set your hips down, swing around. Second side. So on your left forearm, elbow underneath your shoulder, or slightly forward of that actually. Your right leg staggers forward, your left leg staggers back. Lift the side of your waist away from the floor, and then hoisting up. If you need the support of your hand on your shoulder to draw your shoulder down your back, you're welcome to do that. It might feel different for you to have your legs staggered, especially if you're used to having them stacked. Set your hips back, relax into it. Second round. Find your core bracing and spacing, breathing behind the shield of that, and then lift your hips up. Pull your shoulder down your back. Recruit the support that you might need. Set your hips towards the back of your mat. Let everything relax. Okay, here we go. Third and final round of this variation. Good, set your hips back and down. You made it. You made it through that side plank piece. Now let's light up the back side of your body in a bridge progression. So lay down on your back. And in this progression, we'll start out with the feet forward of the knees a little bit. If you're used to walking your feet in and touching your hands to your heels, that's going to bring your knees, for most of you, over your ankles. That becomes more of a back bending bridge and less of a turn on for your glutes and hamstrings. So walking your feet forward of that, allowing there to be distance between your feet and your heels. And then from here, lift the toe side of your foot up. So just the heels are down on the ground. Plug your elbows into the floor. It's going to give you a little bit more support through the rest of your upper torso. And then imagine the curves of your spine and maintaining those curves of your spine as you bridge your pelvis up. And then lower your hips back down. You're welcome to do this with both feet down on the ground, or you'll bring your right knee in line with your right hip. And this will bring us into a single leg bridge. You can plug your elbows down into the floor, bridge your pelvis up, keeping the two sides of your pelvis even, and then lower down. Total of 5. So that's 4, 3, 2, 1. Second side. Bridging your pelvis up, sensing if you can keep the two sides of your pelvis parallel. Then we have 5 pulses. So this is 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, next we'll walk this bridge out. And for some of you, this is just gonna light up the backside of your hamstrings, your glutes. If you feel this at all in your lower back, make sure that you didn't pop your ribs up towards the sky and recruit your lower back to do the work of your lower limbs. So we'll kind of knit the ribs down towards the pelvis for this. Bridge your pelvis up, plug your elbows into the floor, pull your heels towards your butt, and then set your butt back down, walk your heels forward a few inches. Once again, bridge your pelvis up, pull your heels towards your seat, lower your pelvis back down. You guessed it, walk your heels forward. Pull your heels towards your seat, lift up, lower back down. Now the further we go out here, the more you can start to recruit your hands by pressing your arms into the floor. Some of you will find keeping your elbows bent and driving your elbows down actually causes you to thrust your ribs up. So use that second option if you're one of those recovering rib thrusters like myself. Bridge your pelvis up, set it back down, walk your heels forward, drive your arms into the floor, lift up, set it back down, walk your feet forward, lift, set it down. Now if you go all the way to your legs straight, this is going to be the same kind of lift and pull. My butt is off the floor, and I'm working on driving my arms down into the floor so strongly that I can feel my hamstrings and my triceps. The whole backside of my body is working strong here. Good, lower everything down. Roll onto your left side. And now side plank on your hands with progressions. So in this particular side plank, you can stagger your legs like we did before. You can be down on your forearm like we did before, or you can come up onto your hand. I'm going to show the progressions of this before we go into the full, the full Monty with it. First up, you can put your hand on the floor, engage your core bracing and spacing, lift your hips up, and bring your hand alongside your body. Line your head up so it's in line with your spine. You are welcome to stay here. If it's too much pressure on your hand, you're welcome to come down onto your forearm. You set the hips back to make your way down. Now, those of you that are going further with this, you're coming right back up into that shape, lifting the side of your waist. Hand can come onto your hip, and your bottom leg comes forward. This is a fine place to stay, or you can straighten your leg towards the front of the room. Another fine place to stay if you have it. Then everything regresses and the hips come down and you make your way out of the pose. If you're like, wow, this is all so easy, I wish Kim would challenge me a little bit more, you're in luck. There is more. From any one of these progressions, we'll add in a rotation. So the rotation looks like this. You hoist yourself up, bring your hand behind your head, and you're rotating your torso towards the floor and then unraveling that. We have 5 of those total. I just demoed all of this on my one hand, so I'm actually gonna flip us so that I can work my second side as I take you through this, and then we'll turn around and do the other side. So start with your right hand down on the floor. Right leg is gonna come forward. Actually, I think it's your left leg. Bring your hand to your hip and lift up. Choose your own adventure with this, either staying here or pull the bottom leg forward and straighten it towards the wall in front of you. Bring your hand behind your head for 5 rotations. Rotate down towards the floor and unravel. Try not to let your hips go with you. If you have your leg in this final progression like I do, you're doing your finest not to let the leg droop towards the floor. I lost count, I said 5. Here's one more for good measure. And then I like to save enough juice to come out of the pose. Swing around for the second side. Left leg goes back, right leg comes forward. Prop yourself up on your hand. Remember, you're choosing your own adventure with this one. I'm progressing with the knee bent, then straight, 5 rotations. Make your way into plank. Long dog. Bend your knees, lift your seat. And in long dog and your knees bent, it's very similar to the hip hinge we did earlier. And you're actually looking to preserve the curves of your spine. So traditionally, we work down dog with the legs straight. In doing so, most people will round their back and lose the curves of their spine. So bending your knees and sensing the lumbar curve, the thoracic curve, the curve of your neck, good. Set your knees down. And we'll need to go back to the wall for a posted single leg deadlift. This modification at the wall is a fantastic place to work if the next little sequence after this doesn't work for you. So I'll show the regression, and you're welcome to keep that and do that for the progression. I'll see you at the wall. These posted single leg deadlifts will be done against the wall. And depending on the way that your femurs come into your acetabulum, your hip socket, some of you will be able to hinge further, some of you will not be able to hinge as much. But the skill of preserving the curves of your spine throughout this are really important. To help us keep both hips, glutes engaged, we'll use a different variation than you might be used to if you're used to doing these single leg deadlifts against the wall. So you'll position yourself at the wall and kickstand your right foot to the wall. Play with how far away from the wall that you are so that you're able to hinge your hips towards the wall without trying to look for it or rest into it. Similarly, if you put more weight in your hinge over the ball of your foot, you'll activate more glutes. If you put more weight into the heel of your foot as you hinge, you'll recruit a little bit more hamstrings. So your hands are on your hips, your 2 hips are level, and you're working on hinging, almost like a dial of your hips coming forward, and then making your way to a tall standing position. We'll do 5 of these. Note that my foot on the wall is below the crease of my knee. This is going to help me recruit just a little bit more of those muscle fibers I was telling you about earlier. So again, you can do more of this if the next sequence is too much. We just do 5 on this side to get a feel for it, and then 5 on the other. Now, positioning yourself in a tall standing position, your foot lower than the crease of your hip, or excuse me, the crease of your knee. And then your hands on your frontal hip points, or you could put that dowel here, or like if you imagined that you had the dowel there, so that when you hinge forward, you can really make sure that you're not collapsing down towards the floor, but maintaining the curve of your spine. So 5 of these here. Remember, if you put more weight in the ball of your foot, you get a little bit more of the glute recruit. If you put more weight in the heel of your foot, you get more hamstring. All good in my book. Good. So again, welcome to stay here and keep doing those at the wall, or meet me in the center of the room with your mat, and we'll go on to today's mini vinyasa. Okay, we'll take that same skill that we just did at the wall and into a standing leg pose series. It starts, well, you start facing at the short end of your mat with a standing Apanasana. So pour your weight or list your weight into your right side. Draw your left knee in towards your chest, and then straighten your left leg out. Nothing changes in the curvature of your spine. Bring your knee in towards your chest, and then as you hinge at your hips, you fold forward, maybe straightening the leg towards the wall behind you. Draw your knee in towards your chest, rise up to standing, pulling your knee in, straightening your leg out, drawing your knee in, hinging at your hips, straightening your leg out. 8 more of these. Keep your standing leg slightly bent, especially as you hinge forward. Finish strong. Remember, towards the end, sometimes we'll speed up to try and kind of plow our way through discomfort. I can tell you right now, my standing leg is on fire. The arch of my foot, the back of my calf, all of that working hard to stabilize and support me. Last one. Whew. Holy moly, standing leg. Roll that out. 10 may have been a lofty goal. If you found that you got 3 into that or 5 into that, and then you had to take a break, fantastic. You can always work on slowly progressing your reps up. Remember, quality over quantity. Let's do the second side. Pulling your right knee in towards your chest, straightening your leg out, knee to chest, hinging at your hips, straightening your leg. Total of 10, so 9 more. It's a lot of work, huh? Poising yourself perfectly isn't the point. The wobble in your standing leg is all part of the practice. Your posterior chain is the whole backside of your body. And sometimes when we think of, oh, I need to strengthen my posterior chain, we don't think of the back of the calf. We don't think of the Achilles tendon or the ankle or the foot. But that's all part of it. Finishing strong. Oh, roll out your standing leg. It's a valiant little effort there. Standing in Tadasana with your feet right underneath your frontal hip points. Allow your arms to roll open towards the sides of your body. If it feels comfortable for you to do so, go ahead and close your eyes. And just sensing the awakefulness or the river of aliveness running down through your legs to your feet. You may notice that suddenly your feet almost have more sensation, more awareness to the mat underneath you and the shape or the connection of your feet to the mat. And open your eyes. So the posted deadlifts that we did against the wall, and even that last little standing pose series, all occurred within the sagittal plane. This next move is goddess pose to goddess hops, and that takes us through the frontal plane. And here we'll use all of the awaken and aliveness that we created in the backside of our body to help us in this launching through the sides of our bodies. So make your way into goddess pose, or horse stance as you might know it. Sink your hips down And throughout these hops, you'll find that we're prioritizing press off with the foot. And then when we land, we're prioritizing the ball of the foot and then the heel down. So just keep that in mind as we go. So I like to start with my hands at my heart in Anjali Mudra. Just conjuring up a little bit more extra energy to take us through this next piece. And then we go to the right. So your arms go behind you as you flick your leg out to the left. Now these goddess hops aren't so much about how high you can lift your leg. In fact, if you're doing that, you feel the side of your waist scrunching up, then you're going to your low back instead of the posterior chain. So think of pointing your toes towards the short end of your mat as you spring up, guiding your arms behind you to help just kind of solidify all of the work we just did. Second side. Prioritizing your landing. So it's ball to heel. Every time your arms go behind you, it's really like when we were in that laying down position, walking our bridge out, is getting the whole backside of your body to light up. Good. Back into Tadasana we go. Lift your weight into your right foot. Get light in your left leg, lifting the heel of your foot up off the mat. Bring your two forearms parallel in front of you. And we'll go through a down regulating our nervous system and bringing our breath rate down. You can do this by closing your eyes and attempting to lift your left toes off the floor, just an inch. If you lose your balance, you can always set your foot down. If closing your eyes is too much for you, you're welcome to keep them open. Good, this little balance challenge. Do you notice how quickly your heart rate just kind of slowed down? Let's do the other side. Lift onto your left leg, get light through the right heel. Turn your hands palm face up, much like we were holding that dowel at the beginning of practice, but spread out through your palms. You can close your eyes if it's comfortable, and then peeling as much of your toes off the mat as you can. Closing your eyes or keeping your gaze fixed on something that's not moving. And then set your foot down. So in this little balance challenge, we get to experience what it is to really rev your heart rate up and then use the intelligence of your body and your balance to help land and downregulate as quickly as possible. In the same way that we don't want to stretch out all of our tension, we need that tensegrity because it's what holds us together. Similarly, we need that window of tolerance to be able to take our heart rate up and then slow it back down. You've done incredible work today. So let's start to unwind in half happy baby mini Vinny. You'll need your strap for this next move, for most of you probably. And if you don't have a strap, grab a scarf or a towel or something. Half happy baby mini Vinny. You'll take your strap around the instep of your left foot. Holding the strap in your left hand, draw your left knee down towards the floor. This is position 1. Position 2, take your strap into the right hand, guide your leg across the midline, and this is position 2. Position 3, you'll let your right hip drift down towards the floor, straightening your left leg out for this laying down spinal twist. Back to position 2, catch the strap with your left hand. Back to position 1, drop your knee towards the floor. And then it's just toggling back and forth between these 3 positions. This warm down that we're doing is using dynamic movement instead of static stretching. If you sit a lot or you have a long commute, you don't want to stretch all of that really good activation that we just created in our hamstrings and glutes out. If you have further to go, there is a 4th position. From your half happy baby, you'll straighten your left leg out to the left, almost like in a leg stretch number 2. Rebend to your half happy baby, catch the strap in the right hand, and then over you go. As you warm up, you may be able to actually warm down. You may be able to straighten your bottom leg out. That's going to take you just a little bit further in the pose. Of course, if straightening your leg out is too much, you are welcome to keep your knee bent. Before we switch sides, take the strap off your foot and lay down in Shavasana for a moment. Close your eyes and take a moment to feel the difference between your left leg and your right leg. And then you might even open your eyes and take a peek at your legs and notice if they're in fact one's longer than the other. Bend your knees, take your feet flat to the floor, and let's go into half happy baby on the second side. Lasso your strap around the instep of your right foot. Grab a hold of the strap with your right hand. Draw your right knee down towards the floor. Your 2 hips will be uneven here. Take your strap into the left hand and straighten it out to the side, straight into that 3rd position. Back through position 2 and into position 1. Try not to get seduced by the stretch in any of these positions. Sometimes we can feel like, oh, I just need to hold or stretch this out because it feels good. But in that sense, can you use the dynamicness and the constant movement to explore coming in and out of sensation, in and out of the stretch? Okay, 4th position, knee comes down towards the floor. Maybe you straighten your leg out. If you're going further, perhaps you straighten your left leg out. Move your strap off of your leg, back into a Shavasana-like shape. And just take a moment and sense your two legs. We're winding down towards Shavasana now. And to help us get there, we'll go through a series of contract and relax. So inhale, swelling with your breath, filling until you can't breathe in anymore. Then suspend your breath. Squeeze your toes, your calves, your thighs, your hips, your glutes. And exhale, let it all go. Next wave of inhale, filling, suspending, squeezing your hands, your arms, your chest, your belly, squeezing your upper torso. Exhale, letting it go. Inhaling once again, suspending at the top of your inhale, scrunching your face, opening your mouth, sticking out your tongue. Exhale, let all of that go. And continue to surrender into Shavasana by bringing your arms into the most comfortable position for you to rest. If laying flat on your back isn't comfortable, consider putting a pillow or a bolster underneath your knees. And the doing part of our practice is done. This being part of our practice usually takes a little bit more time to settle into. So be patient with yourself. It takes about 3 minutes for your body to settle into final relaxation. You can help that process along by relaxing your eyes back from your eyelids, softening the muscles of your face. Relaxing the front of the body into the back of the body, and the back of the body into the floor beneath you. Resting into the support beneath you. Being Human by Niama. I wonder if the sun debates dawn some mornings, not wanting to rise out of the bed from under the down-feathered horizon. If the sky grows tired of being everywhere at once, adapting to the mood swings of the weather. If the clouds drift off, trying to hold themselves together, making deals with gravity to loiter a little longer. I wonder if rain is scared of falling, if it has trouble letting go, if snowflakes get sick of being perfect all the time, each one trying to be one of a kind. I wonder if stars wish upon themselves before they die, if they need to teach their young how to shine. I wonder if shadows long to once feel the sun, if they get lost in the shuffle, not knowing where they're from. I wonder if sunrise and sunset respect each other, even though they've never met. If volcanoes get stressed, if storms have regrets, if compost believes in life after death. I wonder if breath ever thinks about suicide. And I wonder if the wind just wants to sit still sometimes and watch the world pass by. If smoke was born knowing how to rise. If rainbows get shy backstage, not sure if their colors match right. I wonder if lightning sets an alarm clock to know when to crack. If rivers ever stop and think of turning back. If streams meet the wrong sea and their whole lives run off track. I wonder if the snow wants to be black. If the soil thinks she's too dark. If butterflies want to cover up their marks. If rocks are self-conscious of their weight. If mountains are insecure of their strength. I wonder if waves get discouraged, crawling up the sand, only to be pulled back again to where they began. I wonder if land feels stepped upon, if sand feels insignificant, if trees need to question their lovers to know where they stand, if branches waver in the crossroads, unsure of which way to grow, if the leaves understand they're replaceable and still dance when the wind blows. I wonder where the moon goes when she is hiding. I want to find her there and watch the ocean spin from a distance, listen to her stir in her sleep as effort gives way to existence. Return your attention back to your breath, allowing the next few waves of inhale and exhale to elongate. Bringing your attention now to your fingers and to your toes, inviting little movements. And rolling your ankles and wrists around a few times in each direction. Gently turning your head to the left and then the right as we reawaken our bodies from Shavasana. Bring your head back to center, bend your knees, take your feet about the width of your mat, drop them down to the left and the right. Windshield wiping your legs from side to side before rolling onto one side and resting there for a few breaths. Gently press yourself back up to sitting. And once again, find the prop that you sit on. It could be a block, a bolster, a rolled up towel, a cushion. Allow your knees to be a little lower than the height of your hips. And let's reconnect to the strength, the back line of our body we created by bringing our palms together. Left fingertips face the front of the room, right fingertips towards the sky. elbows the height of your wrists. Inhale, and as you press your palms into one another, feel the circumference of your rib cage. Switch your hands so your right fingertips are forward, your left fingertips towards the sky. Again, press and inhale, feeling the whole back line of your body radiate to the front. Join your hands at your heart now in Anjali Mudra. It's an honor to lead you through practice today. Namaste. I hope this practice serves you on your journey. I'll see you next time.